What is going on, my reefing fam? March here, Fragbox TV. Now, listen, we're going to start a whole new video series starting with this one. It's going to be called March Talks. If you want to hear about corals and how to keep them, and that's why you're here, skip this video, skip this whole entire series. Now, if you're not sick and tired of my voice and my opinion on coral tanks and the industry, then stick around because I'm going to do these maybe once every 2 weeks, and it's going to be more or less just me walking around the store with the camera talking to you about a specific topic related to reef keeping. Today's I want to talk about the revised Queensland coral export of Australia. So a lot of our corals here come from the wild. We do grow a number of them in the basement, and we are trying to promote sustainable reef keeping. What does that mean? Selling corals that are grown here in Canada. We actually have a farm in the basement. It's not open to the public. What you see up here is our available corals for sale, and what you can't see is in the basement we actually have more aquariums than we do up here, and we're trying to grow stuff and sell corals that are grown locally for a number of reasons, which I'll get into in another video. But the point is that a lot of these corals here, as you can see, these we just got in from Australia. So they came right off the Great Barrier Reef. These are not cultured, these are not grown, these are wild, harvested, collected corals right from the ocean. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that means and what I think, as not only a business owner, but someone that's trying to be environmentally conscious and also a die-hard reef keeping enthusiast or hobbyist or whatever you want to call it. So the Australian government, if you don't know, corals are all protected. You can't just go into the ocean and, grab this beautiful blastomussa, this one right here, and take it home. Everything is protected and it needs a permit in order to get exported from the country. So those are governed by governments, for one, and this other thing called CITES, which is the of course it's going to escape me right now. Let's just call it CITES. I'll get back to it when my brain is working normally again. I think I need a coffee. Australian government has confirmed that hard coral export from the Great Barrier Reef can continue for another 3 years. So the industry, if you didn't know, was kind of all up in the air when it came to Australian corals. They announced that there was some uncertainty if we could even do what we're doing, which is grab these corals out of the ocean, send them overseas, export them, and sell them. So there was quite a bit of uncertainty in the industry. So it's basically got a permit for another 3 years, but there are several things to consider. So we won't be able to, this new revised approval is going to change some of the corals that we're allowed to collect. So if you like hammer corals like these or torch or frog spawn, don't worry, because those are still fair game. They decide which corals are allowed to be exported out of the country, but we're going to lose some popular species such as Homophilia, Micromussa, so I think they're referring to acan lords because these have been reclassified as Micromussa, and also Trachyphilia, these ones over here. So the wild collection of these corals out of the ocean will come to an end, at least for Australia. We're able to export still from Indonesia and some other countries, but according to this assessment, those ones are going to be discontinued. Is that the word I'm going to use? I think so. These solitary kind of corals, we're not going to see them really exported out of Australia anymore. Why? Studies and research show that they are, I guess, over-harvested, that they're concerned for the well-being of these corals, and that they are better off in the ocean. So 100,000 kilos of coral exported from Australia between 2018 and 2019. 100,000 kilograms. That's how they measure the export of corals, in pieces, but also in pounds of coral. Now, how much of that 100,000, I don't know, how much does the Great Barrier Reef weigh? How many hundreds of thousands of pounds, millions of pounds of corals are there in the ocean? How much is that? What percentage is that? I'm not really sure. I can tell you, as a business owner, I'm glad to hear that I can still import corals from Australia. It means that we can continue to get all of these lovely corals that we all have come to love. But it begs the question, what does that mean for the environment. What does that mean for the ocean? So I'm not blind to the fact, phone, here we go. So I'm not blind to the fact, sorry, the phone rang, that taking corals out of the ocean and selling them for a monetary gain. That's what we're doing here. I'm trying, like I said, we're trying to move forward and be more sustainable. Hello, and Tia is a good part of that with our FCC, our Fragbox Cultured Coral Program. But anything that's coming out of Australia is wild harvested. It's coming right off the reef. So maybe that's the question of the day. How do you guys feel about that? You know, you're buying corals, they're coming off the reef, we're putting them in your aquarium. I have two sides to it. One, I hear stuff like this, like let's leave, you know, open brain corals, micromusas in the ocean. One side of me says, okay, that's great, that's awesome. Leave these in the ocean. Maybe they shouldn't be exported, and we really should just leave them alone and enjoy them from a distance. The other side of me says, you know, global warming is a thing. We're not really doing, I think, the best that we can, and the oceans are degrading very quickly. So I take this coral out of the ocean, we bring it here, it lives in captivity for a number of years, it survives, it dies, okay, or we leave it in the ocean, and the oceans aren't doing very well anyways, they're acidifying and degrading, and it dies in the ocean anyways. So is that a stupid way to think? I'm looking for comments below. What do you think?
I heard I forget where I heard it, but they were saying that our industry is such a minor part of, like, it's almost insignificant.
Like we take a fraction.
Yeah, compared to like fisheries.
Yeah, that's how I always understood it. Let's say this is the Great Barrier Reef, and what we're allowed to export is this right here. This little itty bitty piece, less than 1%, right? But who's really telling us that? Where is this information coming from? Tia's yelling from the back something about brainwash. She's getting into conspiracy theories. So that's the question of the day. What do you guys think? Do we leave them in the ocean? Does it matter? Is it better to have them here in home aquariums? I really don't know. I'm leaving the discussion up to you. I like to look at both sides of the argument. I'm not saying what's right or what's wrong. I think it's important to discuss it, and it's something that really affects our business. When Indonesia shut down coral exports, what was it, 2 years ago? We couldn't import from Indo? That was a very stressful, uncertain time here in the store industry at large. No one knew where we were going, and that's what really got my ass in gear for Fragbox Cultured Coral. So I'm kind of grateful for that Indonesian ban. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Indo basically banned the export of corals essentially overnight, and we couldn't bring in any, which is a large portion of the corals we sell here in the store. That would be like being, you know, you build houses and then all of a sudden wood becomes illegal. You know, it's pretty tricky. You better figure out how to grow some trees quite fast, because you can't import or export any wood to build that house. Maybe that's a stupid analogy, but that's the one I've gone with today. So that really got my butt in gear. I said, okay, I want to continue doing this. I'm in love with the hobby, if we're allowed to call it a hobby. I'm in love with, you know, the corals, the reefs. We've been doing this 10 years. How do we make this sustainable? How do we continue so that even if Indo shuts down, Australia, Fiji, Vietnam, let's say worst case scenario, I like to play the devil's advocate, we can't import corals from anywhere. What does Fragbox look like? What does the industry look like? And how do we continue the hobby in a world where exporting corals is illegal? We are at the mercy, in a way, of CITES, Convention on International Trade of Endangered Species. Sorry, I didn't get it earlier. My brain was having a brain fart, which happens quite often. That's a sidetrack. I'm going to call that a sidetrack. What happens? We're at the mercy of CITES, of regulations. We're up here in Canada. Let's say, for example, Mr. Trudeau or whoever's in power at the time says, you know what, you cannot import corals into Canada. We've done our research, and these beautiful corals belong in the ocean. So Australia is exporting, but Canada is not going to allow the importation. I'm at the mercy of the governments. They decide the rules, and then we play the game based on the rules that they have set. So I'm thinking, okay, worst case, no corals allowed to come in. How are we going to make this work? How are we going to continue to Fragbox and continue on what we're doing? That led to the Cultured coral program in the basement. Let's start taking individual pieces. Let's pretend that that's actually going to happen. I want a piece of this, and 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 a piece of every little single coral we have here in the store. And I'm going to start to grow them in the basement so that in the worst case scenario, we can continue to sell them. Even if the prices become higher, people will have to adapt and change. This is already an expensive hobby. Maybe it would become a very expensive hobby. I kind of saw a world where, you know what, if we don't start doing something now, we're going to end up with aquariums that are basically just full of green star polyp, pulsing xenia, and captive bred clownfish. And that may be fun for some people, but not for all of us. So that's what got it into gear. That's today's March Talks, episode 1. Like I said, this is going to be more ranty. I don't want to use the word rant, more discussion based. Less about teaching you how to keep corals, and then just more of a general talk about one specific kind of discussion. If you like this sort of video and you're already, or you're still here watching it, give me that thumbs up, and then I'll know, okay, they're not tired of me talking. Let's do some more videos like that. Let's talk about environmental impacts of taking corals out of the ocean, and how do we move towards something more sustainable. Indo has kind of implemented that kind of framework. So a lot of the corals that we're getting out of Indo now are cultured, are grown out in the ocean. They're taken, they're not collecting right off the reef, but for a lot of solitary corals, so that's like scolies and symphilias and open brains and stuff like that, they still are wild harvested. Now, that begs one more question. How important are open brain corals? Let me just show you an open brain so you know what I'm talking about before we go ahead and kind of wrap this one up. This is what I'm saying, open brain coral. This is going to be one, Trachyphilia. This is going to be one of the corals, I believe, not allowed for export out of Australia. How important is this coral to the reef? What does it look like in a world where we no longer have Trachyphilia? I don't know. I'm not a marine biologist. I'm not a scientist. I didn't go to school for this stuff. I'm just someone who's got a passion for reef keeping and corals. I understand the importance of preserving. I can better understand at least preserving stuff like this, acropora and hard corals that literally calcify and build the reef. These are the structures. These are the animals that will calcify and then die and they get covered over with, and will literally build the reef structures that are important for housing fish and biodiversity and all those benefits that we get out of coral reefs. I don't know how important an open brain coral is in that regard. Maybe they're really important and I'm just ignorant, and someone can chime in below. Same thing goes for Acanthostrea. What role do hammers and torch corals and frog spawns play in the overall health and population of a reef? Hopefully we have some marine biologists out there that can better expand instead of me just talking out of opinion. Keep that in mind. Please, everything I say, take with a grain of salt. I'm really just giving you sort of my input and my opinion as, like I said, not only one, as a hobbyist, but two, as a business owner. So I think I have that dual view. I have it from sort of both sides. I can talk to you with the passion and love that I have for keeping the corals, that I hope comes through in the videos and here in the store, but then also I have that other side, the business aspect, where we're doing this in order to make money, in order to stay afloat, in order to pay the rent, in order to pay the staff, in order to buy sushi lunches, and then to hopefully take some home and pay a mortgage and have a life. I think that's about it. When we start talking about life, and now we're really, this seems like a whole sidetrack sort of video. But like I said, it's going to be the first of many. I'm going to call it March Talks videos. If you like it, give me the thumbs up. Go ahead and subscribe, because we do a video here every single day of the week. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm really looking forward to the comments below. Have a nice day.